Forget the American CIA, the British MI6, or the Russian KGB. The most effective, complex, and lethal intelligence service in history didn't use satellites or hidden microphones, and it operated out of Spain. From a simple wooden desk in the mountains of Madrid, Philip II knew absolutely everything, anticipating naval strikes months before they even happened. He even knew what the Queen of England herself was having for dinner before her own staff did. Imagine it for a second. You have to rule the largest empire on Earth, with vast territories scattered across 5 continents, in an era when a single message took months to cross the ocean. Your enemies are lurking in every shadow, desperate to intercept your orders. English pirates, French saboteurs, the Ottoman Empire. To understand the sheer magnitude of this network, you first have to grasp the logistical nightmare Spain was up against. We are looking at the latter half of the 16th century. The Spanish Empire didn't just dominate the entire Iberian Peninsula, half of Italy, and the Netherlands. It swept across nearly the entirety of the Americas and reached the remote Philippine Islands. Back then, there was no such thing as sending a text. Information was physical. It carried weight, it took up space, and above all, it was agonizingly slow to travel. An urgent order from the king leaving Madrid took 2 grueling weeks to reach Paris, a full month to infiltrate London, 3 or 4 months to hit Mexico City, and well over a year if the target was Manila. The entire world was a massive chessboard, but the players were moving blind, lagging months behind. Yet, amidst this blackout of information, one stronghold cut through the dark. The true central server of the empire, the monastery of San Lorenzo de El Escorial. There, locked inside a cramped, austere study, a brutal contrast to the grandeur of the rest of the palace, was the man himself, Philip II. Behind closed doors, his own advisors whispered a moniker. The Paper King. It wasn't an insult. It was a terrifying testament to his relentless work ethic. Philip II read, annotated in his own hand, and dispatched roughly 400 letters and documents every single day. Let that sink in. 400 reports a day, detailing troop movements in Flanders, the price of wheat in Seville, dark conspiracies in Venice, and the flow of gold from the Indies. His brain was the largest database on Earth. But this system had a critical flaw, a fatal vulnerability that Spain's enemies sniffed out almost immediately: the messengers. Picture for a moment a Spanish rider cutting through the forests of France in the dead of night, carrying the invasion orders for the tercios in his leather pouch. If a French spy intercepted him, slit his throat, and read the message, the entire empire could collapse in a matter of weeks. English pirates didn't just raid galleons for gold and silver. They hunted for official correspondence. A single letter could be worth more than a chest of doubloons if it held strategic intelligence. The king knew this. He knew his messages would inevitably fall into enemy hands. So he made a radical decision. If the English, French, or Turks stole his letters, he would ensure that upon opening them, the only thing they found was pure madness. The golden age of Spanish cryptography was born, and the ultimate weapon had a name: the General Cipher. Imagine you're an English spy serving Queen Elizabeth I. You've just ambushed a Spanish courier on the dark roads of France. You snatch his satchel, shatter the wax seal on an urgent letter from Philip II, and upon opening it, you are faced with this. No words, no phrases, just absolute chaos. Congratulations. You've just slammed headfirst into the most advanced security wall of the era: the Spanish General Cipher. In the 16th century, most European kingdoms relied on simple codes like swapping the letter A for a B or replacing a C with a number. To Spanish cryptanalysts, that was child's play. The system engineered by the Spanish crown, spearheaded by intelligence secretaries like Juan de Idiaquez, was an absolute mathematical nightmare. An end-to-end encryption that would have driven any modern hacker completely insane. For starters, A single letter could be written in 3 or 4 different ways. If the enemy tried counting which symbol repeated the most to guess the vowels, the Spanish system shut them down by constantly shifting the symbol for the letter A or E within the exact same sentence. But the masterstroke, the most wicked genius of the system, were the so-called null symbols. The Spanish deliberately injected dozens of fake symbols into their letters, symbols that meant absolutely nothing. They were planted there solely as a deadly trap, designed to waste months of labor for the English and French mathematicians desperately trying to make sense of them. And as if that weren't enough, they deployed a secret dictionary, or nomenclature. Critical words were never spelled out. For example, a crossed-out circle could mean Armada, an inverted triangle meant Queen of England, and the simple number 72 could be the order to attack at dawn. But what happened when the mere act of carrying a coded document was a death sentence in itself? If you were caught with a parchment covered in bizarre symbols, you would be tortured until you confessed its origin. This is where Philip II's intelligence network escalated to the next level. Steganography, the art of making the message literally vanish. Spanish operatives perfected the use of invisible ink. They utilized everyday substances like lemon juice, milk, or a solution of alum and water. An operative would draft a perfectly mundane letter, perhaps posing as a merchant droning on about the dull price of wool in Flanders or the failing health of an aunt. It was a letter any English guard could intercept and read without a shred of suspicion. But hidden between the lines of that tedious text, the Spanish spy had inscribed the true message in invisible ink. When that seemingly harmless letter finally reached a desk at El Escorial, Philip II's secretaries simply held the parchment to the heat of a candle or wiped it with a cloth dampened in specific salts. The concealed words would burn into a dark brown, exposing the truth: an assassination plot, the movement of an enemy fleet, or the list of English nobles ready to betray their queen. They had the technology, they had the logistics. But an espionage network is nothing without its field operatives, and Spain had the absolute best. A man so lethal, brilliant, and deeply embedded, he made James Bond himself look like an amateur. He managed to buy off half the English court. It is useless having the most sophisticated invisible ink or the most unbreakable mathematical code on the planet if you don't have an asset deep in enemy territory to write the message. The technology needed a mastermind on the ground. And this is where our own James Bond steps in. A man who didn't wear a tuxedo or order shaken martinis, but dressed in severe black, a hardened veteran of the bloody battles of the Tercios in Flanders. His name, Bernardino de Mendoza. In 1578, Philip II deployed him to London under the official guise of ambassador to the Spanish Empire. To Queen Elizabeth I of England, Mendoza was nothing more than an arrogant diplomat attending palace banquets, but operating under the cloak of diplomatic immunity. Mendoza was, in reality, the chief of station for Spanish intelligence on British soil. His mission was never to sign peace treaties. His mission was to spin a vast, inescapable web right in the very heart of England. In a matter of months, Mendoza began purchasing allegiances. Why dispatch Spanish spies who couldn't speak the language and would only draw suspicion when you could simply buy the English themselves, fueled by the massive influx of gold and silver flowing from the Americas? Mendoza began bribing court servants, harbor masters, merchants, and Catholic nobles harboring deep resentment toward Queen Elizabeth. The infiltration was so deep and ruthless that Mendoza knew exactly when Sir Francis Drake's ships were setting sail, the precise routes they would take, and the exact number of cannons on board. And the masterpiece. He funneled all this intelligence back to Madrid, encrypted in the ciphers we saw earlier, concealed within the false bottoms of wine barrels, or stitched deep inside the boots of couriers slipping across the English Channel in absolute secrecy. But Mendoza was not alone in this game of shadows. He soon crossed paths with his nemesis, his British counterpart, Sir Francis Walsingham, Queen Elizabeth's spymaster. Thus began a ruthless intelligence war. Spies hunting spies, couriers assassinated in pitch-black alleys, double agents collecting pay from the Spanish crown by morning and the English crown by night. Mendoza escalated the stakes far beyond simple espionage. He began bankrolling covert operations to overthrow the Queen of England. He orchestrated and financed dark conspiracies to assassinate her and place Mary Stuart, Queen of Scots, a Catholic and staunch Spanish ally, on the throne. Finally, in 1584, Walsingham, aided by traitors, managed to intercept and decipher letters directly linking Mendoza to an assassination plot against the Queen. The fallout was explosive. Elizabeth I demanded an immediate audience with the Spanish ambassador and ordered his swift, uncompromising expulsion from the country. Any other diplomat would have begged for mercy or fled in terror. But Bernardino de Mendoza, armed with the ice-cold nerve of history's greatest spy, looked the English ministers dead in the eye, turned on his heel, and delivered one of the most epic and menacing lines ever recorded in the history of diplomacy.
Dígale a su ama que Bernardino de Mendoza no nació para perturbar reinos, sino para conquistarlos.
And try he did, because Mendoza did not retreat to Madrid to hide. Philip II, thrilled with his work in the shadows, deployed him straight to Paris, his new station. And there, the Spanish espionage network would stop playing politics and enter its darkest phase, targeted eliminations. And so they did. The intelligence network proved to the world that it didn't merely steal secrets in the dark. It could alter the course of history with a single strike. It was this very network, funded in the shadows, that orchestrated the first firearm-based black op in history. The target, William of Orange, the leader of the rebellion against Spain in Flanders. In the summer of 1584, an undercover operative named Balthazar Gerard managed to bypass all security, infiltrate William's home, and assassinate him at point-blank range. A surgically precise state-sponsored execution carried out thousands of miles away and coordinated from the mountains of Madrid. We tend to remember the Spanish Empire for the blinding gleam of its armor, the gunpowder of the tercios, and the boundless gold of galleons crossing the Atlantic. But the true machinery that kept this global colossus standing was not forged from steel. It was forged from paper, from invisible ink, impossible mathematics, and spies willing to die in hostile alleyways. Philip II grasped the golden rule of the modern world long before anyone else. Information is power. And for decades, he dominated the entire globe simply because he knew absolutely everything.